Good morning. Happy Thursday. Our last Thursday of the year. George B. Thomas talking about building some superhumans. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. I can't believe we've arrived. We're at the end of the Superhuman Framework conversations. We've talked about pillars and cornerstones, and hopefully people, if they're watching this in the future or have been for the entire journey, have learned a lot and embraced it, hopefully taking action. But dude, I'm doing good, and I'm excited to be here to talk about today's topic.
Me as well. So thankful I've been able to support you sharing this awesome framework. I think it's going to have a massive impact. And here's something like we'll get into persistence as this last cornerstone, but how you kind of know this is real life coming from a real human, who's built this, who's lived this. Persistence, especially the last cornerstone, right? A couple weeks ago. And I was waiting for this, right? I've been just throwing everything at George. Like, let's do this. Oh, we're going to do a hug. All right, we're doing a morning show. And so I get a message from George. He's like, maybe not. I'm looking for space. Maybe we could just pick up the next episode of Superhuman Framework in 2025. And I was like, yeah, that's okay. I can see that. But it just happens to be the persistence cornerstone. So maybe we want to, persist and finish that off. So I just had to share because no matter how smart or talented or advanced or okay, this person's in a different world, they've got all these other things, of course it's working for them. Even George, this guy who is amazing, he's already a superhuman, still has these challenges, and who better to talk about these challenges and share how to get through them than George B. Thomas. So thank you, man. Thank you for persisting today.
Yeah, it's funny because when you said, it is on persistence, behind the scenes, I was like, oh, crap. Well, crap. I'm like, put it back on the calendar. I will figure out space and time and bend it and all that stuff. I do want to hit one thing, though, too, because I would not say I'm a superhuman. I would say I'm a superhuman in training. I use all of the things that I talk about on a daily practice. I fail many times. I'm victorious other times. It is a journey. I've not reached the destination, but these cornerstones are the foundation of who I try to show up as. These pillars are the gauges that I'm paying attention to along the way. And listen, as we've talked about in some of these sessions that we've done, there's been times in my life when I've blown up my entire engine, ended up in the hospital for 3 days. There's times in my life where I didn't believe that I could even be close to super or close to human, that I just didn't deserve it. I didn't believe in myself. And so just know that no matter where you're at, this framework is built in a way to hopefully at least pick the pieces that you can use to get you to the next level, to embrace the next pieces and just grow along the way. So yeah, anyway, hopefully, again, my whole point of spending the copious amounts of time to bring this to the world is I just wanted to help humans get to the next level of where they could be. The world that we live in right now and have been living in, and especially the world that we're moving into at rapid breakneck speed. I just find this is going to be more and more important for individuals, for teams, for cultures, especially for leaders moving forward. So anyway,
yes,
yeah,
no, I agree. And the world of abundance is here, and this kind of framework positions to leverage, take advantage of, whatever you want to call it, enjoy that abundance better than any other framework I've seen. And I've gone through a few in terms of both from the self-improvement but also professional improvement frameworks, and the way it ties all of it together. And this is, for me, this is why it works. When you put both of those concepts together, professional and personal, and we try to separate them just so often, it's not possible, in my opinion. You've got these cornerstones, and so the whole framework built on top of love, purpose, passion, and today we're going to talk about persistence. Most of the other frameworks are not built on these things. They're built for other reasons, like advancement or career progression or achievement, right? And it's just without this kind of foundation, it's hard to build on top of it. So excited to talk about persistence with you today.
I'm excited to talk about persistence, and a couple things I want to double down on what you're saying, Chris, is one of the pillars is holistic. And one of the things that you hear in our space, probably the world just in general, is work-life balance. But then you go to do a personal growth course. or you do a professional growth course, right? You're going over to like one place, Headspace, and then you're going over to LinkedIn or LinkedIn Learning. And so like it's literally holistic, meaning it's work-life balance, it's individual, and like, so we're trying to combine it all together. And it's human centric. So many of these are like process or platform powered, right? Like, listen, I'm not judging. I love HubSpot Academy. I built an entire business off of being good at HubSpot, a platform, and all of the education is basically based around strategies that you can apply into. I'm saying it's about the people. It's about the humans, brother. And we have to be persistent. We as individuals, we as leaders, we as teams. And here's where I kind of want to start. Is I want to start with like, what in the world do we even mean when we talk about persistence? Because like, it's not a word that we jam on every single day. Like, we don't natively understand it. And then also like, what do we mean when we're talking about it through the Superhuman Framework lens, right? So the first thing I want you to do, it could be you, Chris, or you, the viewers or listeners of this, is when you hear the word persistence, like what comes to mind? And you might want to jot down, pause it or whatever if you're watching the recap of this. What comes to mind when you think of the word persistence? Okay. Some of the words that might come to mind, grit. Right? I think
that was it.
Grit.
That was the number one.
Yeah, right. I think of determination. Or you might even like expand it out a little bit more and you're like, I think it's like this relentless ability to keep going regardless of anything that gets in my way. I don't care about obstacles. I'm going to go right through them. Like, you might be that kind of human. You might be thinking it in that kind of way. But here's the truth about persistence, at least in the Superhuman Framework. It's not just about enduring, right? But when you think about grit, when you think about determination, when you think about obstacles, it's like, I can endure through all, right? And many of us, like, if we're faith-based, we're like, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things, right? Like, that's our like call to like arms when it comes to this idea of persistence. But persistence is also, again, the way I look at it, it's about adapting. It's about overcoming. It's about flourishing through life's challenges, whether they're personal or professional. And for those new here, like, let me just recap for a quick second, because persistence is only a piece of the puzzle, right? We kind of talked about this, but the 4 cornerstones of the Superhuman Framework, these cornerstones, love, purpose, passion, and persistence, what we have to understand is they all work together like gears of like a well-oiled machine. Love lays the foundation. Purpose aligns our efforts. Passion fuels our drive. And persistence, the topic of today, persistence makes sure that we stay the course no matter what. Okay, that's how they're working together. And when you pair these cornerstones with the 10H pillars like hunger, health, or humanity, or any of the other ones, we start to create something powerful, a holistic system for flourishing in every area of life, personal and business, like everywhere, if we're paying attention to this. So I want you to think of persistence as the engine. It's what keeps you moving forward when the road gets tough. It's not about just pushing through, because again, when you think about grit and words like that, it's like, I'm going to hit my head on the brick wall 1,000 times till I get through. It's not just about pushing through. It's about growth. It's about resilience. It's about discovering a meaning even when we face hard times. So that's what I'm talking about when it comes to persistence. Chris, what are your thoughts?
I like the last visual of how this is not pushing through blindly, right? Like, how many people do you watch? And this is like why, consultants and coaches can be so valuable. Is that the right wall to be banging your head on? Like, do you even know what the wall is made out of? Maybe there's a door right next to where you're banging your head. It's awareness just as much as it is about, pushing forward. And, my wife she likes to bike, and what came to mind is like, if you're biking up a hill, you're changing gears. Your legs are still supposed to be moving at the same speed, but you've adjusted, something in the engine to support, that journey and make it not so hard at that very moment. But then when you're coming down the hill, like, you've got different gears to jump into, and you're ready to go. Because at the end of the day, you have an end. There's an end purpose in mind for this is why we're doing. This is why we're on the bike. This is why we're, moving in this direction, and knowing that walls might show up. but understanding, thanks to all these other things that we're talking about, that's what comes to mind, and why it's important. I agree, it's important to define what we're talking about, because it's like you said, the first thing that came to mind was grit. And you just think about this whole like grit culture of just like, for me, that doesn't resonate with me. This does, right? Let's be smart about the forward movement, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the thing. If we know what it is now, right? And by the way, when I hear you talk, it's funny because my brain went to like, I've got a method to my madness and a plan for my progress, which you might want to jot that down. There's a method to my madness and a plan for my progress. What is what we're talking about look like for individuals? For individuals, persistence is about this shift in mindset to see the challenges that are coming your way. And trust me, they're far out. You can't see them, but they're coming your way. To see challenges not as barriers, but as opportunities for growth. This has been one of the largest life lessons that I've had to learn along the way, to the point now that I get excited when tough times come, because I literally go, whoo, I can't wait to see who I'm going to be after this one, right? So the ability to look at setbacks and say, what can I learn from this? How can I grow stronger because of it? Versus a, victim, woe is me mentality. I literally, on the Beyond Your Default podcast, Liz and I, we did an episode on victor versus victim mentality, which ties very much into this conversation of resilience and perseverance and all of the, and again, not that grit is a bad word, but this mindset that we're talking about. And so I want you, as the viewer, the listener, Chris, you as well, like, think back to a time when you faced a significant setback. Ask yourself, did it stop? Did it define you? Did you adjust? Did you pivot? Did you keep moving forward? Did you give up? I need you to think about that time and what you did versus maybe what you would do now, and especially what you would do if mindset shift, right? The moment of adjustment, that decision to keep going despite the odds, like, that's what we need to hook into our brain. Like, there's got to be like, I know this thing is happening. Can I grow from it? I've got to make a conscious mindset shift. I've got to make a decision to keep going despite the odds. That's persistence in action. So for me, one of those times was my math teacher told me that I would, this is like ninth grade. Math teacher told me that I would never amount to anything. Dude, I went to school in the morning. I thought it was going to be like any other normal day. I sat down at the desk. I'm, of course, a class clown. Like, what I was getting in trouble for, I literally make money doing now, because the world is my stage, right? So I'm in class and being a class clown, and this math teacher says, you'll never amount to anything in front of everybody. Within 6 months, I'm a high school dropout. I have this belief now that I can't learn anything. I have this belief that I'm stupid, right? But I have to come to this point in my life where I had to make a decision to keep going despite the odds, to keep going despite my math teacher's words, to keep going despite what had been built into me, which was limiting beliefs. I had to make the decision to shed individually's limiting beliefs and start to, I am smart. I can learn. I actually now get paid to be a class clown on stage, right? And to educate people. But here's the real question that I think we might be or should be asking is, how do we consistently cultivate this kind of resilience in our life? Because it sounds great. Like, I can come here and be like, been there, done that. Here's what you should be doing. But you're going to sit there as the viewer listener and go, sweet dude, I have no idea how to pull off what you're talking about. And so I want to give you like a couple things here as an individual. I think your starting point is you have to learn how to reframe failure. So many times we get stuck in the ditch that is failure. Like, instead of seeing it as a roadblock, we need to start viewing what has been failure as feedback. It's a way to learn. It's a way to grow. It's definitely a way that we can take the information, the data that is coming in from this air quotes failure, and we can refine the future approaches to the things that we're trying to achieve. Every stumble is a step forward to becoming better, to becoming sharper, to becoming more capable to do the thing that you tried to do that was, again, air quotes, failure. The next thing that I want you to start to focus on is to adopt a personal mantra. And I'll give you one, but you should probably like create your own. But the idea here is you need to anchor your mindset. One I have used in my life and I love is like, life is working for me, not against me. Life is working for me, not against me. Because so many times I've had times in my life and I've seen people around me in my life, they self-sabotage. But if you have this mantra, life is working for me, not against me, there's a positive flow, right? And you have to say it out loud when the going gets tough. And you can whisper it to yourself when doubts creep in. But this simple phrase powerfully reminds you, the human, that in every experience, even the hard ones, they have the potential to move us forward. It might be micro steps or it might be giant leaps. Last but not least, something practical that you can try right now. The next time that you encounter a challenge, pause. I want you to take a deep breath and I want you to ask yourself, what is this teaching me? How can I use this to grow stronger? Yes, I am saying this again on purpose. Key questions, the concept of having an internal conversation and asking yourself questions. Here's the thing. Persistence is not about perfection. Persistence is about progress. It's about learning or leaning into and from discomfort. It's about staying curious. It's about finding meaning in every single step of the journey. So many times we get into this rhythm of like, I need to pay attention to the peaks. Man, the lessons are in the valleys, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to throw that out there. The lessons are in the valleys. Like, the only reason you can get to the peak is because you had to go through the deep, dark. And so how do you stay persistent to make it through that piece? When you make persistence one of your foundations, you're not just surviving, right? Because so many times, again, in my life, there were times I didn't even know if I was going to survive, but I had this mindset of, could you just make it through one more day? Like, that's not a good mindset to have. So when you make persistence one of your foundations, you're not just surviving, but you're creating a life where challenges become stepping stones, not stumbling blocks. Chris, before we get into teams, what are your thoughts, my dude?
I just have to shout out Willem. Thank you for watching, man. He says, there is a method to my madness and a plan to progress. Disturbingly valuable. Love Willem. We'll be on with him in a little bit. But a lot to unpack there, but I'll stick with the first thing that came to mind. And again, you just can't separate this stuff out, right? Like, the persistence we're talking about, it's very hard to achieve without love, passion, and purpose. And a great example should be the go get paid, go get money, like just suffer through it and make money. Well, if you don't love striving for the almighty dollar, if you don't have a passion, sure, like, yeah, and there are people out there that can do that, but most can't. And progress doesn't always have to be forward, like in a traditional sense. And I'll share my mantra since you shared yours, and that's the universe wants me to win. And I got that in 2020 when I started meditating, and and then listened to the Alchemist book, which is great. Similar statement, and I like to line things like that up. Like, I had never heard of that book before just going through this meditation, but like once you start embracing it, serendipity happens and you start to enjoy things. But one of the things professionally I had to start doing, like with the kind of self-compassion that I was learning through this mentality, is like I was creating my own walls. And I got in the habit of asking myself, if I feel like I'm behind right now, is anybody else asking for this deadline or this project to get done or whatever I am struggling? No? Okay. Maybe I can take a step back from this one and not put so much pressure on myself and not get down it, and then look at all the progress around me, like once I release myself from those expectations. So I think that's when we're talking about the wall scenario, when it's very hard to stay persistent if you're banging your head against the wall and you cannot see progress like anywhere. We have to be able to see something positive, and it's very hard to do that without all the other components we're talking about. And teams, having other people around you can definitely, support that in a big way. So what about teams?
Yeah, what does that look like? Because it's when you're in charge of yourself and you're doing this for yourself, that's great. But like now you got other humans, which adds a level of complexity, right? And to be honest with you, in teams, persistence, it takes on a whole new meaning versus like the individual. It's not just about having this kind of individual trait, but it becomes I'll call it the glue that holds the group together, especially when the going gets tough. And let's be honest, work and team dynamics are always going to have moments that are tough. It's not like we go get paid to play and frolic in the flowers. That's not reality. Like, there are deadlines. There are things that humans have individual problems that they bring to work. And like, some humans are great and some are just bad apples. So like, but at least if you have this idea or inject persistence into the team, you're going to be able to navigate some of that, because at its core, persistence in a team setting is about collaboration and trust. Collaboration and trust. Those are the words that I would want you to kind of write down in conjunction with persistence, because a persistent team doesn't crumble under pressure. And by the way, that's a lot of times you can probably call back to like, yeah, man, we tried to do this thing and we might have been able to do this thing, but we crumble. Like, we just fell apart. So when you have persistence, it's less of that crumbling effect, but it's more about being able to rally together. It's more about being able to adapt in the moment. It's more about, finding ways to move forward together. Now, here's why I think persistence matters when we're talking about team dynamics, Chris. It builds resilience. Teams face daily challenges, tight deadlines, resource constraints, unexpected roadblocks, and persistence makes sure that instead of falling apart, the team grows stronger by tackling these challenges head on. Second, persistence in teams fosters this culture of trust that I mentioned. When team members know that they can count on each other and count on each other to keep pushing through adversity, it creates an environment where, again, collaboration can flourish or thrive, or whatever words you want to throw in there. And finally, it unlocks creative problem solving. If there is a superpower that I could enable in so many organizations that I've worked with historically, and so many teams in those organizations, is the ability to have creative problem solving, not leader problem solving. Anyway, persistent teams embrace the mindset that every problem has a solution, even if it requires thinking outside of the box or trying a new approach. Adaptability, pivoting, transitioning, like new thinking, shifts in mindset, right? Take the 10H pillars of the Superhuman Framework. Pillars like helpfulness and humor are especially crucial here, by the way, when we're talking about team dynamics and persistence. Helpfulness ensures that team members actively support one another. They're sharing the workload and lifting each other when someone or something falters. Humor in this case, well, this is what keeps morale strong during those late nights or high stress situations, reminding everyone that we're in this together. This is how some of the pillars and the cornerstones work together in these different sections of individuals, teams, company cultures. Let's take an example, Chris. And by the way, if you hear this and you're like, is my office bugged? No, but imagine your team is working on a critical project and suddenly you fall behind schedule. The pressure's mounting. Deadlines are looming and tensions are high. In a team without persistence, the default response, the knee-jerk action, might be frustration or finger pointing. Chris, have you ever worked with a team where there's been frustration and finger pointing? I'm just saying, it's rhetorical, but I see your face. Chris is like, maybe once, right? But in a team rooted in persistence, the energy shifts entirely. Instead of assigning blame, team members come together to reassess the situation. They brainstorm new strategies, redistribute tasks, and find creative ways to meet the deadline. They come up with a method to their madness and a plan for their progress, right? And the best part is they come out of the challenge not just with the project completed, which is always great because you can take a big deep breath, but with stronger bonds and a renewed sense of trust in each other, which makes the next project way easier, the next project way better. That's, to me, is the power of persistence in team dynamics. It just doesn't get the work done, which has to happen, but it builds a foundation for long-term success with the team and team members. So for the leaders out there, you might be wondering, how can you cultivate persistence within your team? Listen, you've got to encourage open communication. You've got to create a safe space where team members feel comfortable sharing challenges and seeking help. Yesterday, I was out on on location workshop. And the thing that we kept coming back to over and over again, that this organization had been building along the way, that made it a differentiator, was psychological safety. Because there was open communication. There was safe spaces. As a leader, you've got to celebrate progress. You've got to recognize small wins along the way to keep the morale high, even during the many tough times that you're going to have as an organization. And you have to foster we've got this mindset. Hey, team, I know it's hard. We've got this. Remind the team that every challenge is an opportunity to learn, grow, and innovate together. Persistence, Chris, transforms teams. It turns obstacles into opportunities, and it makes sure that every setback is just a stepping stone to something greater in that team's future. Chris, what are your thoughts?
It's interesting how we always come back to communication. And in this sense, like for individuals, it's basically self-talk, self-communication, like our own mantra, like what are we telling ourselves, or literally how do we communicate with ourselves? And not everybody has psychological safety even there. But then, so now it's external dialogue, right, with teams. And it's different, but usually that's at the heart of most team dysfunction. And you have to be able to trust that persistence is coming. And when you're at the point where everybody's aligned, and again, we come back to purpose, like I think that's a key one here. Like if everybody understands the purpose of what's happening, I don't care if George made a mistake today. I know he's in it to win it. I don't care if Susie didn't show up today because I know she's committed for the long haul. So I'm not even asking questions like that. And that's where we can just dive into these places that just add no value. And that's where you start to, okay, if anybody's questioning what's happening here, it's very hard to be persistent in those situations. So again, we come back to the other things, and that's where this open communication, where it's like, you build that trust, but occasionally I might be like, hey George, what's up? What's going on today? Anything I can support, or I notice this thing. If there's a barrier to being able to do that, just it creates challenges. So yeah, I know a thing or two about hanging out in teams, and it was a great learning curve. I'll never regret those learning experiences that I got from interpersonal dynamics. I wouldn't be the coach that I am today without that experience.
Without a doubt. Again, everything is a learning lesson. It does come down to, and this is why I make fun of, like, yes, when I'm training people on HubSpot stuff, I'm like, yes, I'm asking you to have a conversation with other humans inside your organization. And everybody giggles because they feel the uncomfort of what I'm saying, and they know that it's like difficult. But one thing that you bumped up against too, as far as communication, was also like, but as a leader, you have to keep some level of accountability. But now your accountability isn't surface level BS that's actually eroding the trust and collaboration of the team. It's like real needed accountability that you're throwing in there. And since I'm already talking about leaders, Chris, let's just dive into that piece of it as we kind of get ready to close this bad boy out. And know fully, as a leader of a team, multiple teams, actually, if I think about it, in everything that we're doing, from the Superhuman Framework to Sidekick Strategies, but beyond your default, I'm preaching to myself when I say some of these things. But leadership, it demands, let's call it, a unique kind of persistence. As a leader, we're not just navigating challenges for ourselves. We're setting the tone for every single human around us. It all starts from the top, ladies and gentlemen. The way we approach setbacks, the way we as leaders adapt to uncertainty, the way that we as leaders stay the course and become the example that individuals and teams will follow. And I'm going to ask you, and I do not mean any disrespect, but are you being a good example to the humans inside your organization? Yes or no? If you say maybe, no. Yes or no? Maybe, no. Okay. Great leaders, we model resilience. We don't just talk about persistence, we freaking embody it. Like we ooze persistence, we ooze adaptability, we ooze grit, all the things that we've talked about, right? We show teams that obstacles are not roadblocks. Obstacles are stepping stones. We do this, though, with a balance of strength as a leader, but I would even say maybe almost more importantly, vulnerability as a leader. Pairing persistence with humility and honesty, two more of the H pillars, right? Pairing persistence with humility and honesty to build trust and connections with the other humans inside of the organization. Humility, in this case, tied to persistence, allows us as leaders to admit when we don't have all the answers. And when we can admit that we don't have all the answers, then this builds a culture where collaboration can thrive because we help them and they help us. And so help me help you. Help me be a good leader because I don't know it all. This company did not come with a manual out of the box. Like I used to say that to my kids, by the way. What am I supposed to do? Spank you, ground you? You did not come out with a manual. But as leaders, we don't know. Transparency, right? You got to stop just kind of hiding things or hiding from things. Honesty can create a foundation of trust that inspires the team to stay engaged and committed. Again, even when times get tough and deadlines show up and we're out of budget, whatever. But if you're transparent because you're being honest about where you actually are, persistence doesn't stop at the individual leader or the team. We've talked about both of these. As we close, I want us to realize that it needs to flow into the overarching company culture. And as leaders, we have a responsibility to create these environments where persistence is embraced and celebrated at every level. This means embedding persistence into the organization's values, behaviors, and even the systems that you're creating. When we as leaders take the time to understand the importance of persistence in this and nail this down, we make it easier for individuals to embrace it themselves. And in turn, it naturally starts to flow into the team dynamics and the company cultures. Now, here's a couple ways that we can make this happen. And again, kind of mentioned these, but we've got to take them to this level of when we're thinking about embodying it into our culture. Again, leaders, micro leaders, individual humans, we all need to lead by example. We all need to show the other humans in the organization and the teams that we're on how to navigate challenges with resilience and creativity. We have to be open about our own journey, demonstrating that persistence isn't about perfection. It's about progress over time. We've got to celebrate persistence in action. How you choose to do this at an organizational level is up to you, but recognize and reward the moments when individuals or teams persevere through a challenging time. So many times, Employee of the Month is the peak. Celebrate the valley. Okay, so again, recognize and reward the moments where they were persevering through the challenges. I believe this reinforces the value of persistence as a cornerstone to success. Make persistence part of your culture. Build systems, rituals, support. Hopefully, if you're a leader and you're watching this or listening, there's things coming to mind. Create spaces for teams to share learnings from setbacks. Create open communication. Encourage a growth mindset in yourself and across the organization. When persistence becomes part of your company's DNA, it will transform how challenges are perceived and handled. It empowers individuals, it strengthens teams, it creates a culture where resilience and adaptability are the norm, not the exception. And as leaders, we set the tone. When we lead with persistence, we don't just overcome obstacles, Chris. We create a ripple effect. And you know how much I love them ripple effects in life. But we create a ripple effect of resilience and growth throughout our organization. So remember, persistence isn't about never failing. It's about rising every time you do. When I was a little kid, there was a saying that my dad would say, when you get bucked off the horse, you dust yourself and you get back on. You get bucked off of life, dust yourself off and get back on. Whether it's as an individual, a team leader, or organizational persistence, persistence is the thread that ties us to our goals and keeps us moving forward. So I want you to ask yourself, how can you embody persistence today? And more importantly, how can you inspire it in others? Because if you do, to me, that just feels superhuman.
I just want to say one thing, like in terms of persistence and leadership, because it's so counter to what most people are taught, in my opinion. The ability to ask for help and support as a leader. That's what, like, persistently doing that. Like, you might as well attach it to persistently having the growth mindset as a leader. Like, no matter how high you are, no matter how long you've been there, you don't know it all. And when you can show that, when you persistently ask for help, I don't know if anything creates psychological safety like faster or more effectively, right? Because if you don't know everything, then I don't have to know everything either. And we're okay with that. And we're going to get it done together. And that persistence to really focus on creating that space, that's how easy it could be, is just showing up. It's not what it isn't, right? It's persistence to get the thing done. Like when you jump in and solve the problem and put out the fire like the hero, that actually has the opposite effect. And even though it feels good and people are like, oh, great, that's done. It's like, all right, we're ready for you to come in and do it next time. Like, no need to persist over here.
It's funny because my brain goes in a couple different directions. One, I immediately think of this show that I love, which is 911, which the captain of the fire department is always enabling the team to be the heroes versus him jumping in and being the hero. Of course, it's a TV show, so every now and then he does become the hero, but you get my point. The other thing is it doesn't have to be this massive heavy lift. My mind is transported to sidekick strategies where there's a simple saying that we have, but it is so freeing. And that is every single one of us in the organization, we want to go to bed masters, but we want to wake up students. It's that simple. Like just enabling that in your team is a massive shift in probably any organization that they've ever worked in before.
So until next time, we'll see you in 2025. Let's grow, folks. Let's grow.